moved on to being on the first floor of the VA, and I could see outside. I could see real people walking on a sidewalk, and it was the most amazing feeling because I could turn my head and see it. Keep in mind, turning my head caused extreme amount of nerve pain, but it was worth it. Another unusual thing, there were turkeys just walking right outside my window at the Minneapolis VA, so that was a interesting feel. Somebody would come in and be like, "You got turkeys outside your window?" I'm like, "Yeah, they're my pets, my zoo right there." The positive things started to accumulate, and I just had to notice them. It was hard to notice them, but they were there. And so I had to think about this, looking at the turkeys, the nurses' smiling faces, little things like that. My wife would come in and I'd be grateful that she was there only for that 2 hours.
And that just kind of begins the process of his recovery.
That's a good time to say I was in recovery. We got to the spot where I could have therapies. So that was a moment that we were all trying to get to, but it just took 2 months to get there. I had physical therapists and occupational therapists at that time had to come into my room. I couldn't leave the room, but they said they'd work on my arms and my legs, and at this time was when other places started to open up. My chest, my stomach. They say that Guillain-Barre comes in your toes, up, and then out. But it's a matter of how long that takes and what you have to go through. My upper arm started to open up, and I'm like, okay, that's great. I can move them. And it was a lot of like lifts like this, and just the most important thing I could say is, as it opened up, I realized that I was no longer paralyzed in that area, but it caused the most extreme nerve pain, and it didn't go away. It stayed there, and it stayed there. It was the most painful at night. Without medication to make me go to sleep, I would not sleep. I'd stay up, and this is moving medication doses up and down. They need my feedback all the time. What level of pain are you in? Out of 10, and it was often 7, 8, 9, sometimes 10. Like it's one of those things where I can't even explain and to make somebody relate to it other than being electrocuted, just hooked up to a million cords. So I remember that. I didn't have an end date of when I was allowed to leave. I wanted to know that every single day. I wanted to know when I could leave. We could have people come up to the window of glad I was on the first floor, come up to the window.
We were allowed to visit him outside of his window. So he was luckily on like a main floor where he had big windows. He could look out onto the beautiful grounds. And instead of turning my head, I think, which I couldn't really do too well at the time, they turned my whole hospital bed. My wife was in the room with me, holding my hand, and my in-laws were at the window with my son, Maximus. He hadn't seen Max. He hadn't seen him in a month. I mean, I don't even think we FaceTimed really too much while he was in the hospital because he was in so much pain and just in and out. So for a whole entire month, he hadn't seen him.
And he says, "Dad," and it was his first word. So, yeah, that was.
We were fortunate enough, Drew was able to see Max, and actually that was when Max said his first words. His first words were "Dada." So that was a really cool moment for all of us. So
that was another indicator that it gave me hope. What do I need to do to get out of here? My occupational therapist gave me a list of exercises, but it was practicing raising my arm. So I'm sure it was a lot like this. I think it was like that. So it was a lot of, I could do this part. So she said, do that 20 times. I did more than that, and it was painful, and I didn't want to do it. Whenever I could and I had the strength, I would be doing 40 of these, and that got me to the next step, I was able to go out of the hospital room. So they gave me I had to be in a powered wheelchair.
They had to have, the oxygen on him, and he had to be in a specialized wheelchair with all these other gadgets and things. So it was a lot of work to get him to be sitting up.
Getting out of the room was a huge thing. I wanted to do that, but also I didn't want to see anybody I didn't want to explain what was going on, I guess. I didn't want to acknowledge there's party. I still didn't want to acknowledge that this was a real thing that was going on.
He didn't want people to see him in that state. He didn't know how people would react.
Some of the best points were when my friends and family came in to visit. My best man at my wedding, he would come over there and we would play poker or cribbage, and he wouldn't ask me about what was going on with me unless I brought it up. And so that was the coolest feeling, where he treated me like nothing was wrong with me. And I can't explain it any more than that, but just being treated like a regular human meant so much for me. Knowing that somebody could treat me like that, not wanting to help, not feeling bad for me. Yeah, just as an equal.